This is Career Coaching X's and O's, and I'm your host, Mark Anthony Peterson. I am the founder and thought leader at Enroll Consulting, a small business strategy and technology consulting firm. A small part of our practice is executive coaching. These episodes are the summation of some of those sessions. Today's episode, 5 steps you must take after you've become the boss to your workplace best friends. If you've been following the advice of this podcast, inevitably you're going to get promoted. And if you get promoted, there's going to be a high probability that you're going to get promoted to be the boss of some of your workplace friends, possibly even your workplace best friends. What are you going to do when that happens? Well, there are 5 steps that I want you to take in order to make your career successful in managing those relationships. The first thing I want you to do is learn how to say no. As a friend to colleagues at work, they become very comfortable with you and your personality, and they will make it very difficult for you to say no to some of the things they think you can offer them in your new managerial position. So how do you go about saying no? Well, first, you want to learn how to say no to the request and not to the person. Mark, it's not personal. I just cannot approve that particular request. So by separating the individual from the request, you can maintain a good working friendship while still denying the request. Another way is not to answer immediately. Request additional time to analyze the request so that you can come back with hard facts as to why you may need to say no to that particular request. Finally, flip it back on your work colleague or work friend. What would you do if you were in my situation? And if they say that they're willing to violate the company trust in order to provide you something because of a friendship, your reply can be blunt and direct. Maybe that's why they haven't made you a manager yet. But learning to say no is going to be the most important step that you're going to take as a new manager, particularly when dealing with work friends. What's the second thing you need to do? Review all of your work failures, everything that you have not succeeded in at work, and make sure you can turn those into teaching moments. Why? Because your work friends and colleagues, in moments of anger, will throw those failures back in your face. If you're managing them, that may happen during a team exercise or a team moment when you least expect it. If you're prepared, you can turn that failure into a teaching moment that can help other members of your team understand how confident you are in your managerial abilities. Trust me, it will happen. In the same way that your kids will remind you of any failures that you had when you were their age, employees will remind you of failures you had when you were lower in the company. And if you can turn those into teaching moments, you have the best opportunity to build a very stable and strong team because they know you've been through the trenches and understand how to turn failures into success. The third thing you should do is limit the old social interactions you had with your work friends and create new social interactions where you are viewed as a manager, where you're viewed as the person in control. So if you were accustomed to going to lunch every day with your work friends, limit that to maybe once or twice a week instead of every day, and come up with new social interactions where you have total control over the situation from a managerial perspective. So on 2 or 3 other days, maybe you have brown bag lunch and learns where you still sit with your team, but you have a focused objective of trying to learn and or teach something important about your firm or your practice. That puts you in complete control but still in a social setting where you can interact in a personal way with your work friends. The fourth thing you should do is seek advice from other managers. Learn from them what the company protocols are, what's expected of a manager. I worked at a company where managers were not expected to have lunch in the company cafeteria with employees. Managers were expected to sit with other managers, and employees were expected to sit with other employees. It sounds strange and draconian, but that was the expectation. You should learn what your firm expects of you as a manager, even in those sorts of settings, so that you don't disturb the apple cart and get off to a bad start after your promotion. Finally, you should enroll in managerial training and any sort of leadership classes that your firm or company may offer. Some of the best employees make the worst managers because they can't empathize with employees who are struggling to get their work done. Leadership classes help you take a walk in the shoes of your employees so that you have a more rounded 360-degree view of all of their perspectives. Don't assume just because you got promoted, you're ready for the job. You should use mentors and coaches in any class that you can take to help build your toolkit, your soft skill toolkit to help you become a better manager. Jack Welch, I think, put it the best when he talked about his role as the leader of General Electric. He said he spent all of his time trying to motivate and encourage his top employees and get rid of all of the bureaucracy that blocked them from being productive. He understood what his role was as the chief leader and cheerleader within the organization. He wanted to unlock the value of his top employees and motivate them by being very personal and understanding what each of them needed. It seems like a simple lesson, but it takes many chief executives a lifetime to learn how to motivate people. Now, I know some of you listening to the podcast happen to be that work colleague or work friend who has to report to a work friend that just got promoted and became their boss. I haven't forgotten about you. I want to give you 4 things that you can do after your best friend gets promoted to be your boss. First, conduct a skill self-assessment. Determine where your skill set is relative to your best friend and see where the gaps are. I'm going to put 2 links in the show notes of self-assessment tests that you can use to grade your skills and help chart out a course that will improve your likelihood of getting promoted. One of them is a skills test, and the other is a 360-degree self-assessment that you can use to get anonymous feedback from several of your colleagues, bosses, customers, and vendors to help you get a full view of where you are in your capabilities within the organization. So please check those out. I think that would be very helpful to get that picture of where your skills stack up relative to people in your industry. Second, invest in training. Go back to school. See if your company offers any sort of paid program where you can go back and get an MBA and commit to working so many years for the firm. I know at many of the companies I've worked for, they've agreed to finance the entire cost of getting an MBA for many of the employees if they signed on the dotted line and agreed to work for a minimum of 2 to 3 years for the company after they've received the degree. That's a great way to catapult your career into management and walk away with something that will be an insurance policy for you for the rest of your life, a degree. The third thing, I want you to step up and take on initiatives that might be visible to other managers and other units. I know I've made a practice of doing that at everywhere I've worked. Taking on projects that will be visible to managers outside of my unit giving me exposure to them and opportunities when available to transfer into units that may have more visibility to the top guys in the corner offices. And the final thing I want you to do is start acting like a manager before you become a manager. When I was a consultant at Accenture, that was the mantra when we first started out as new consultants. If you want to get promoted, you have to start acting like the job you want to get, so that everybody starts to think you're in that job and making it obvious that you're ready for promotion. You need to do that as well. Start acting like the manager you want to be. I'm going to include a link to a Harvard Business Review article with that title, Act Like the Leader Before You Become the Leader. A very helpful article that will take you step by step through some of the major areas that you should focus on in trying to create that persona. These are the 5 steps you must take after you become the boss to your workplace best friends. I hope you found this episode helpful. If so, please hit subscribe and share this show with your friends. Also, leave us a comment. Tell us the issues you're struggling with in your career, and we will research it, and we may even build a podcast episode around it. If you need additional help, please find us on the web at Ceyero.com, Ceyero.com, and let us help you develop a plan for your career. This has been Career Coaching X's and O's, and I am your host, Mark Anthony Peterson, founder and thought leader.